Dr. Karuna, Professor of Computer Science Engineering, will introduce him to the gathering.
Very good afternoon. Professor Ved Prakash, former Chairman, University Grant Commission, New Delhi, former Chancellor, KIT University, Bhubaneswar, former Vice Chancellor, Neocon, New Delhi. Professor Ved Prakash has held eminent positions in a number of premier national and international organizations dealing with education in general and higher education in particular. Prior to assuming the charge of the office of the Chairman, UGC, Professor Ved Prakash served as Vice Chairman, UGC, Vice Chancellor, National University of Educational Planning and Administration, New Delhi, and Secretary to UGC. Additionally, Professor Ved Prakash also served as Advisor, Planning Commission in Education for Government of India. As Professor and Head of the Department, Educational Measurement and Evaluation, National Council of Education Research and Training, New Delhi. As Associate Professor, Institute of Banking Personal Selection, Bombay, and as a Joint Director, Staff Selection Commission, Government of India, New Delhi. A recipient of US Fulbright Postdoctoral Fellowship, Professor Ved Prakash was a visiting faculty at the Humanities Research Group, University of Windsor, Canada, and a guest faculty at the Harvard University, Harvard Institute, International Development, Harvard University, Cambridge. He worked as a consultant for the World Bank. Professor Ved Prakash has presented the Government of India in a number of high-powered delegations to forging collaboration with other countries in the field of higher education and research. Besides, he has participated in a number of national and international conferences and has authored a number of books, articles and research papers on a wide spectrum of areas concerning higher education, educational planning and administration and personal selection. With this few opening remarks, I would like to invite Professor Ved Prakash, former Chairman UGC, to please address the gathering, and it's over to you, sir. Thank you.
Very good afternoon to all the distinguished participants present in the hall today. Most respected Dr. Pallam Rajuji, former Union Minister for Human Resource Development. Esteemed Vice Chancellor Professor Prasad of JNTUK, Kakinada. Distinguished members of the faculty from the university, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a matter of great honor and a very special privilege for me to be with you this afternoon in the august presence of my minister with whom I worked in Shastri Bhavan, and I worked with 6 union ministers during my tenure with the University Grants Commission, and I can tell you very honestly that he was the finest person I have ever met during my service time. And I'm deeply impressed that he came all the way from Hyderabad. He traveled overnight to come and to be with us here, sir. I'm truly grateful to you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, what I propose to do in the next 40 minutes is that I will be giving you a conducted tour of the global trends in higher education vis-a-vis the intents of the National Education Policy 2020, so that we can have multiple takeaways and we can pick up some ideas as to how we can translate the intents of the National Education Policy 2020 into reality. I would begin with the statement that education is a subject that has continued to evolve and extended its reach since the dawn of human history. I need not underline the significance of education. In fact, if you go into the discourses of our freedom fighters during that era, you will find that education, equality and social justice were the main subjects of discourse during freedom struggle movement. But these three subjects seem to have not received desirable attention after independence, and as a result of which we continue to live in a highly stratified society, which is neither good from the economic perspective nor from the political perspective. And we live in this highly stratified society because we continue to observe hierarchical values and attitudes which are deeply entrenched in our society. The further stratification of the society was foreseen by Kothari Commission in 1966, when Kothari Commission envisaged education as a process for social transformation to bridging up the gap between the masses and the classes. And the Commission also wrote that education ought to be used in the context of nation building for forging unity in diversity and for building a shared citizenship based on democratic, social and secular values. Now the question arises, why does it happen like that? If you look at the world scenario, you will find that everywhere you will find two contrastive perspectives in any society. One is the fatalistic perspective. People think that nothing is going to change, things will remain as they are. And there is another perspective, that is a utopian perspective, wherein people think that any desirable state of affairs can be brought into, provided people with good intentions and necessary goodwill are prepared to bring it into being. And interestingly, these two orientations, the fatalistic orientation and utopian orientation, they are not two distinct characteristics of two different sets of persons. You can see both the orientations in an alternate phase within the same individual. Now the question arises that what have we done in the last over 7 decades? I can answer, I can say that we have traversed a long distance. We have created a very gigantic system of education in the country in terms of school education and in terms of higher education. We have about 19.5 lakhs schools in this country catering to the needs of the children in the age cohort of 3 to 18. That number is about 27 crore. In higher education, we have the largest system of higher education in terms of number of educational institutions. We have 1,168 degree awarding institutions in the name of institutions of national importance, central universities, state universities and institutions deemed to be universities, and colleges offering undergraduate and postgraduate programs. But when it comes to quality, much leaves to be desired. And it is from here that I would like to make a critical analysis and suggest some ways as to how we can overcome those inadequacies that we are suffering from, particularly in the sector of higher education. The global data report reveals that there were 2 occasions in the world when the societal aspirations were expressed at the international level. One was in 1924, after World War I, when the world leaders had met in the city of Geneva, and they adopted a number of resolutions, but of them I would like to quote one which relates to education, and it has 3 assertions, and I quote, that the children must be provided the tools for their natural development, and that those who are backward must be supported by individual nation states, and that the children must be placed in a position wherefrom they can make a decent living and create a civil society. Unquote. Not much happened. The world was again pushed into another war in 1939, which continued until 1945. And after the end of World War II, again, this time the world leaders assembled in the city of Paris and came up with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I would like to draw your attention to Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which has three parts. Part 1 relates to education, and Part 2 relates to values, and Part 3 relates to parental guidance. But because of the constraint of time, I would limit only to Part A, which relates to education. And it says, which is a very historical document actually, in which it is said about education, I quote, that everyone has the right to education. Number 2, elementary education shall be made compulsory. Number 3, elementary education shall be made available free of charge. Number 4, professional and technical education shall be made available to the eligible population. And number 5, which is very important for us to understand, that higher education shall also be made accessible to all on the basis of merit. Unquote. Now, if we carry out a dispassionate analysis of the world scenario, we find that the developed economies have evolved their education system around these 5 stipulations of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They have not only universalized the elementary education, they have universalized their school education. They have created outstanding facilities for professional and technical education for all the eligible population. And when it comes to higher education, merit takes precedence over everything else insofar as the developed economies are concerned. But when we undertake an honest analysis of our own system, we find that we are still struggling with the universalization of elementary education in this country, let alone universalization of school education. We have not been able to create sufficient infrastructure for professional and technical education to the eligible population. And when it comes to higher education is nowhere in the reckoning at the global level in terms of our research contribution, in terms of innovation, in terms of success rate, in terms of gross enrollment ratio, in terms of scaling of the abilities of the teachers. The global data report reveals that there are about 88,000 higher educational institutions in the world, and around 235 million students are enrolled in the higher educational institutions, though millions and millions are still outside the fold of the higher educational institutions. We find that we have the largest number of higher educational institutions in our country, that is around 56,000, which includes universities, colleges and standalone institutions. The second number happens to be the United States of America with 4,000 higher educational institutions. Then comes at the third number China, and then come Russia. All other countries are very small countries. We find that the gross enrollment ratio in higher education in India is 28.5%. We are still 12 percentage point lesser than the world average, which is 40%. We have set a goal for ourselves that by 2035 we would like to attain 50% gross enrollment ratio, which means that every single child in the age cohort of 18 to 24 is going to be on the campus of higher educational institution. And how are we going to do that? We have taken more than 70 years to reach from less than 1% gross enrollment ratio in 1950-51 to 28.5% gross enrollment ratio in 2025. In 10 years' time, we want to increase it to 50%. This is a doable proposition provided we do three things. Number one, when we look at the average size of our colleges and universities, the average size of the college in our country is 500. The average size of a university is only 1,800. So what we need to do is that one strategy could be to maximize the residual capacity of existing institutions. Even in the state of Andhra Pradesh, when yesterday I was reflecting, I was telling that the average size of the colleges, we have 2,602 colleges in the state of Andhra Pradesh today, but the average size happens to be only 500. So one strategy should be to maximize the residual capacity of existing institutions by way of increasing their intake capacity, and that would require the societal support and that would require the support from the state. The second strategy could be that we need to identify areas wherein the institutional density per 100,000 population is lesser either than the state average or lesser than the national average, and we need to set up newer institutions in those pockets. The third strategy could be that we can, because we have the information and communication technology at our command now, so we can make the most out of the ICT and we can have a fusion of the conventional mode of teaching and learning with the open and distance learning mode of teaching and learning coupled with the online mode of teaching and learning. These are the three strategies that we need to adopt to realize the cherished goal of the National Education Policy 2020. And another important thing that we need to learn is that we shall have to grow at an annual growth rate of 4.2% to realize the goal of the National Education Policy. So the key takeaway is this. The another important aspect that we need to reflect upon is the gender parity. Yesterday I was telling that Andhra Pradesh did commendable job, brought down the net reproductive rate drastically as compared to that of other states. But when we look at the gender parity in higher education, we still have to cover a lot of areas. Our gender parity in higher education is 0.93. It has to be taken to the level of anywhere between 0.97 to 1.03. But when we look at the national level, we find that at the global level, we find that the participation rates of women have increased from 19% to 43% in the last 2.5 decades, as compared to that of the participation rates of men from 19% to 37%. We can see similar trends in our country because though it is very marginal difference, but the gross enrollment ratio of girls in India is 28.5 as against 28.4 of boys. But when we look at different states, we find that the gaps are widening and widening very rapidly. For instance, you look at the state of Tamil Nadu, you look at the state of Punjab, the girls have outpaced the participation rates of boys in higher education. But when it comes to their participation rates in STEM disciplines and in premier institutions of our country, it is 18 percentage point lesser than that of boys. And therefore it warrants interventions not only at the level of higher education, but interventions also at the level of school education, wherefrom we can direct the girl students towards exact sciences and mathematics. And not only that, we can help them improve the transition rates from the secondary education to the post-secondary education. I am not aware of any university which is going forward and organizing the orientation programs for the school-going girls. But I am associated with one of the universities in the United States of America. Professors are they are also facing similar kind of problem. And their universities have taken upon themselves the responsibility of guiding, motivating, directing, counseling the girl students to go in for exact sciences and mathematics, to increase their participation rates in STEM disciplines. So the message for us is that the universities should come forward and make meaningful interventions to increase the gender parity in all domains of knowledge. The another important issue is about the inclusiveness of higher education. The World Health Organization data reveals that there are about 1.3 billion people in the world having some kind of physical disability. And I was comparing the data of the United States of America and Great Britain with our own data, and I found out that while 27% children with physical disabilities in the United States of America are the bachelor's degree holder, and 22% physically disabled children are the bachelor's degree holder in Great Britain, in our country only 3% girls with physical disability and 6% boys with physical disabilities are the bachelor's degree holder. And we all know that education of the children with physical disability is hindered by multiple factors. It is not only the physical access, discrimination, prejudices, financial constraints, and therefore we need to provide appropriate interventions to give a boost to inclusivity in higher education across all the institutions of higher learning. The another important issue is about closing the skilling gaps. The fourth industrial revolution, impelled by the emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, robotics, automation, has created humongous gaps across all the industries actually. And it has created a different class of students. We have traditional students in the age cohort of 18 to 23 or 24, but we also have another class of students which is called non-traditional students. We are not caring for the non-traditional students who have already entered into the world of work, but they are finding themselves absolutely inadequate in responding to the requirements of the modern society. They want to go back to their universities and colleges. And the leading universities of the world are coming up with tailor-made programs for these non-traditional students. They are short-term programs which are being offered on the campus of Stanford or Oxford or MIT, 6-month program or 3-month certificate program or 1-year diploma program. I think we also need to think about it with a view to closing up the skilling gaps that have been created due to technological revolution. The another important thing is about the diversification of campuses in terms of student population and in terms of curricular provisions. We have been talking about it a lot. There are significant benefits of doing that, but we have not made any success. Countries like United States of America continues to be the most sought after destination for international students. The US is hosting more than 1 million international students. Great Britain is hosting about 600,000 international students. And in the recent past, countries like South Korea and Singapore, they have also emerged as hub for the international students. China has done so very well that some of us will be surprised to know that China today is hosting 570,000 international students. They have come up with the proactive policies. But when we look at our own data, we find that we are hosting only 47,000 international students, and that too only from the neighboring countries, and that too only in the undergraduate programs. Very few international students, even from these neighboring countries, are coming for the master's program and for the PhD programs. And therefore, it warrants that we must also learn a great deal from countries like South Korea and Singapore and China, the way they have come up with flexible learning pathways, flexible policies, and attracted large number of international students. I think we need to realize the significant benefits that it will bring to us by way of internationalizing our campuses. But when we are going to diversify the campuses, we would be facing another challenge, and we must be ready for that challenge. Which means that we will be having children from diverse backgrounds. Some would be coming from very scholarly background, from very affluent families, whereas others would be traveling from places like Nellore, Guntur, Mahbubnagar, Vizianagaram, Wayanad, Malappuram, backward areas. As teachers, we need to realize that the children from diverse background requires personalized and structured teaching and learning, and for which we will have to articulate well-designed, flexible learning pathways. There are about 11 flexible learning pathways which are available at the global level, but we have not even thought about it yet. I think the time has come when we should also come up with flexible learning pathways for the purposes of providing differential treatments to the children coming from very, very diverse background. This is also going to raise the issue of disparities in academic attainments, like Professor Agarwal was highlighting this during his address. And we as teachers have the responsibility of narrowing down the disparities in academic attainments. The Western world, when the Western world started internationalizing their higher education system, they switched over immediately to subject-specific benchmarking of learning outcomes. And therefore, I would also like to highlight this issue that our teachers need to come up with a template through which we need to go in for subject-specific benchmarking of learning outcomes. Whether the teacher is teaching in institution A or institution Z, the teacher needs to know what are the appropriate pedagogical processes which are required to effectively transact the course content in the classroom. What are the appropriate evaluation tools which would help us assess the potential of the individual learners across the institutions. And it would also alert the students about their duties and responsibilities. And this is not a very highly technical task. We have undertaken this exercise with various institutions in the country, and we have seen significant benefits of that. And therefore, I would like to leave this message that we need to switch over subject-specific benchmarking of learning outcomes with a view not to mitigate altogether the academic disparities, but to narrowing down the disparities in academic attainments which exist within the institution and also across the institutions. The another important aspect is about the teaching and learning. We have been talking about interdisciplinary teaching and learning for a very long time. I would like to share my own personal experience. When I was graduating in chemistry, I was taught periodic table as a chart. When I was graduating in BSc with biology, I was taught photosynthesis as a biological process. I was never ever told about the significance of those elements. The only thing that I was told is to remember the symbols of the elements, the atomic numbers, atomic weights, and distribution of electrons in different orbitals. But now when we go to the doctor, and when the doctor tells us that the sodium level is very low, you need to do something, then we realize the significance of the subject that we had studied 45 years ago. I think the time has come when we need to switch over to thematic approach of teaching and learning. We need to resort to team teaching. We need to dissolve the boundaries between the disciplines because the new knowledge lies at the intersections of different disciplines. And here I would like to cite one example. You Google and you find out the Nobel laureates of the last 10 years, and you would find that majority of them are those who have defined the basic boundaries of a particular discipline. And therefore we need to realize the significance of it, and we need to integrate the teaching. We need to switch over to interdisciplinary teaching and learning. I was very surprised. I was analyzing the curriculum of MIT, Harvard, Stanford and University of California at Berkeley, because I was to inaugurate a conference on philosophical research in Goa 3 months ago. And then I decided that let me find out how are they teaching philosophy in those leading institutions. And to my utter surprise, I found that they have integrated philosophy with artificial intelligence. They have integrated philosophy with biotechnology. They have integrated philosophy with law. I mean, disciplines like this, whereas we consider subjects like philosophy and sociology as luxury disciplines. I think we need to switch over from the conventional mode of teaching and learning to interdisciplinary mode of teaching and learning because of the significant benefits that it will bring us to the classrooms. The another important thing that we keep talking about, the research. I would like to share with you the global trends. In the recent past, China has outranked United States of America in terms of their share in global research. I am quoting from the latest data. The share of China in global research has increased to 20.2% as compared to that of 17.5% of the United States of America. China is today publishing more than 1 million research papers annually. United States of America is publishing 750,000 odd research papers annually. Though in global ranking, American universities continue to dominate, but insofar as their share in research at global level is concerned, it has plummeted in the recent past and China has outranked. Then I thought that I should look into the kind of resources that they are investing for the promotion of research. I found out that the United States of America is investing 3.98% of their GDP on research and innovation. 3.98%, and look at the size of the economy of the United States of America. China is spending 2.46% of their GDP on research and development. Great Britain's share is about 8%. Great Britain is investing 2.98% of their GDP on research and innovation. And when I looked at our own data, I found out that we are spending 0.65% of the GDP on research and development, but our teachers and scientists are still contributing more than 275,000 research papers. With such low level, see the potential that we have. But we are not supporting that potential in the right way. If we increase a little more the resources, we invest more resources for the promotion of research and development, our teachers and our scientists can substantially increase our share in global research. The another associated point that I would like to share with you, some of you may be aware of that, we have been talking about the 6% of the GDP spending on education for a very long time. It is right from 1966 when the Kothari Commission reports were submitted to the federal government, and the Commission in its report had mentioned that we must spend 6% of the GDP on education in a phased manner, and by 1986 we must hit the target of 6% of the GDP on education. I had an opportunity to interact with Professor Kothari, and I asked him, sir, where did you get this magic figure from? How did you calculate this? And smilingly he said that there was no calculation. we looked around and we found out that all the developed economies at that point in time were spending 6% of their GDP on education. So we thought that in order to becoming a developed economy, we must also spend 6% of the GDP. We did not do any calculations. And then I thought that I must look at the present scenario, and I found out that United States of America today, you can Google and see, is still spending 6.2% of their GDP on education. Australia is spending 6.1% of their GDP on education. And I'm quoting from the report of the government of India of 21-22, budgeted expenditure on education. You know how much it is? It is 4.12%. And if you split that across different sectors, we are spending only 1.79% of the GDP on elementary education. We are spending 1.04% of the GDP on secondary education. And we are spending only 0.52% on general higher education and 0.77% on technical higher education, which constitutes 4.1% of the GDP on education. Most of the schemes that we had initiated at the University Grants Commission's level, like we had identified, we had come up with a scheme of universities with potential for excellence. And the idea was like that of China, because China had introduced a policy of double first class. The policy of double first class is that they would identify an individual department which is of international level, and they will provide enormous resources to that department on a prolonged basis. That is first class. The second first class is they would identify a university which has the potential, and they will pump enormous amount of resources in that university for the promotion of research and innovation. And as a result of which, the QS global ranking, which was released only a couple of weeks ago, this time in the first top 100 universities, 5 universities from China has figured in the QS global ranking. 5 universities. They have outpaced Germany, France, and one more European country, leading country. I think it is South Korea. Sorry, not European, South Korea. And I was looking into our own list, though I am not a great fan of the global ranking, because global ranking has its own limitations, and many of our institutions fall flat due to the criteria that they are employing. It is only the IITs which have improved their ranking in the past 2 years, though they have not figured in the top 100. I think the first is either IIT Delhi or IIT Bombay, which has been ranked 129th. But most of the IITs, the first series of IITs, they have improved their ranking this year in QS Global Ranking 2026. Delhi University is the only university which has been ranked 336th. Jawaharlal Nehru University has gone down the hill. Jawaharlal University has gone down to less than, I think, 500. Jadavpur University has also gone down, and I am sorry to share it with you that Indian Institute of Science Bangalore, which is one of the most prized institutions of ours, that has also slipped several points in the QS global ranking. You can always question the parameters employed by these global agencies, but it provides us some kind of indications as to what we need to do and in which direction are we going. So the point that I would like to make is that we are having multiple challenges, right from access to equity, to quality, to skilling, research, But what we need is that we need visionary leadership wherein the people can anticipate the recent trends and come up with new educational offerings. We need to come up with new educational offerings in so-called high opportunity programs like in behavioral sciences, community health, cyber security, renewable energy, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, these kinds of things. But at the same time, we also have to strike a balance between these IT-related programs and the basic domains of knowledge. If we allow our languages, humanities and social sciences to languish in poverty, we will become a very weak society. And therefore, we need to strike a balance between the two. We need leaders who can anticipate these trends and come up with new educational offerings so that we can compete with the rest of the world in this fiercely competitive world. The another way forward is that we need to adopt, we need to adapt, we need to learn from the good experiences that we see. And I'm going to make one very laughable observation, though it is based on my conversation with one of the senior professors from University of Allahabad. He told me once that Allahabad was known as the Oxford of the East. And you know what was the reason for that? I said, I don't know. He said the reason was that we were copying the curriculum of the Oxford University for years together. And all of us did it very consciously because we thought that if some good work is being done insofar as designing of curriculum is concerned, why should we invest our time and resources on that? And when the university does not have any reservations, why should we not do that? And which is why we were doing so very well that we were known as an Oxford of the East. He told me the similar story about Calcutta University. And he told me the similar story about Bombay University. So I would like to leave this word with you, whether you appreciate it or you don't appreciate it, that sharing is not a bad thing insofar as education is concerned. And if good minds have designed very outstanding kind of a curriculum which is needed by the modern society, there is nothing wrong in learning from their experiences. One can have different views about it. I got an opportunity to interact with one of the curriculum groups in Stanford University in the recent past. And Professor Martin Cornoy told me that we have constituted a curriculum group which is designing the curriculum that would be required by us in 10 years from hence. I said, how are you going to envision the curriculum that would be required in 10 years from hence? How are you going to predict about it? I would like to interact with that group. And he arranged my meeting with one of the professors from that curriculum group. And he said, happily, he said that if 20% of what we are envisioning today turns out to be true, we will be a very happy lot. So, the leading universities of the world have already constituted the curriculum groups. They are identifying what kind of jobs would be available in 10 years from hence or 15 years from hence. And because universities have the responsibility of preparing the students for tomorrow's world, and therefore they are doing that kind of an exercise. So the answer for that is, the lesson for us is that collegiality and collaborativeness are of paramount significance. When the Honorable Minister was there, we had launched Sing Obama Knowledge Initiative, and we had committed $5 million for joint research programs annually. And professors from both the sites were conceptualizing the research programs, and they were collaborating. Similarly, we did it with the Israel Science Foundation, we did it with UK, we did it with Australia. I think we need to revive those programs. We have abandoned them. I do not know what are the reasons for that. Maybe the paucity of resources. But when we look at our own country today, India of 2025 is far more resourceful than India of 1950-51, when we had come up with a model through which we had established the IITs. We were spending only 0.64% of the GDP on education, but the leadership at that point in time thought that they would be the real temples of learning, and with such meager resources at their command, they could still come up with such a fantastic model of educational institutions, which Professor from IIT Madras and myself were discussing in the morning, that we created the growth of engines for the United States of America. Here, we could not connect it with the Indian economy. And as a result of which, the children would take the first flight and go to the United States of America and contribute to the economy of that country. So, until today, we have not been able to come up with a different model of governance in education, the one which was envisaged in the IIT system until this day. When we decided to set up ICERs are also the, true copy of the same model. And we have miserably failed to transfer that model of governance to the university system. And the university system, unfortunately, has been sidestepped in preference to, he will fight with me during the dinner time, in preference to the premier institutions. When IITs were established at that time, the idea was that to begin with, they will be preparing outstanding technical professionals. But over a period of time, they would become full-fledged universities. Somewhere we have not been able to do that. And now what we have started asking the IITs, we are asking IITs to offer the teacher training programs for the school children. We are diluting, the brand name. So I would like to close by saying that what we need to do is, we need to do 4-5 things which are very, very vital for bringing qualitative improvement in higher education. Number one is to maximizing the residual capacity of existing institution. Number two, to having a fusion of different modes of delivery to achieve the cherished goal of the National Education Policy 2020. Number three is to come up with new educational offerings in high opportunity programs. Number four is to strike a balance between the basic domains of knowledge and the market-oriented programs. And number five, we need to pump more resources for the growth and development of education. And that cannot be done without the support of the federal government. In this very country, for 50 long years, we have provided quality higher education only through public and grant-in-aid institutions. Those institutions were not for profit making. And they did exceedingly well. But when we opened up this sector for private service providers, unlike the Western world, we started discriminating amongst the public institutions and the private institutions. I think we need to learn from them. The United States of America, and for that any developed economy, they do not make distinction between a private institution and a public institution when it comes to financing of research. Whereas we are still suffering with that problem. I think we need to overcome these kinds of issues for the purposes of doing greater good to our country, for the purposes of empowering our students. If we are not going to empower them, there will be a question of contentment, there would be a question of security, and there would be many more questions. So I would like to stop at this stage, and if there are questions from the audience, I would like to answer to those questions. Thank you.
last question.
I'm Srinivas Prasad. I spent 12 years in Australia as a lecturer and also currently founder of EduGlow company, which is a real-time governance for higher education industry. It's a digital platform that I've been. So I have questions related to specific statistics. For example, you mentioned amazing statistics about how to target and then kind of meet it. For example, like starting with the 4% GDP budgeting for the entire education.
4.12, yeah.
4.12. So, in terms of the reachability for this 4.2% of GDP to all the higher education institutions, vocational education, school education, so is it reaching all the industries? Is it reaching, and is it getting realized in terms of translating to 4% increase in gross enrollment ratio later on, where you are targeting to become by 2030 achieving 50% gross enrollment ratio? So this is a follow-up question about it. And the final question is that in terms of for internationalization of the entire education system requires huge digital transformation initiatives for every institution, universities across. Not only the digital capability, and also it's also about the entire, the curriculum, the culture, all the process of it. So, is the current 4% allocation, the target, and the 4% allocation of the budget, is enough to transition into this new era? And also, in terms of this huge digital transformation, it requires public-private partnership initiatives to adopt new age digital technologies for the universities. So, the Ministry of Economic Affairs has PPP policy for India, and in order to make it realized for the respective states, there is PPP cell. Is this policy integrated in terms of the vice chancellors being able to access that policy and use their autonomy in order to have the PPP initiatives for the digital transformations to make it a reality? So is there that huge bridging the gap sort of things happening? And what is that strategy, and are you confident that the existing policies and strategies can drive these huge digital transformation initiatives and finally meet the gross enrollment ratio of 50%?
50% gross enrollment ratio can be reached because of the swelling aspirations of the swelling middle class population. It can be attained. But your first question is about the resources. I think we have been beating this track for a very long time, the 6% GDP. The time has come, keeping in view the size of education, both at school level and at higher education level. The country needs to set up a fresh committee to ascertain the quantum of resources required to meeting out the aspirations of 38 crore children in the age cohort of 3 to 23. Okay? I think we should stop singing this song of 6%. We require much more than this to provide access to quality higher education to all the children. This is one thing. We had established one such committee under the Honorable Minister's leadership, Tapas Majumdar Committee, and we had provided the estimates to the government at that point in time that we would require this much amount for strengthening the school education and this much resources for strengthening the higher education. I have forgotten those figures now because I retired 8 years ago. Nothing has happened. So the answer to the first question is that we need to set up a fresh committee of experts from across the country actually. Insofar as the second question is concerned, some of our universities have already switched over to online programs without preparing to fulfill the academic obligations, technical obligations, and social obligations, and which is going to impede the quality of the education. I mean, when you are entering into this digital world, making online program on 100% basis, you also have a social obligation to fulfill, to make sure that every learner has access to the smart devices which are needed. You can create your learning management system, that is an easier job. But what about the technical obligation? What about the academic obligation? Who is going to prepare the quality material, which can be in 4 quadrants? It would require excellent text, it would require visuals, it would require simulations, it would require questions and answers, okay? It would require the formulation of the different kinds of activities that are to be performed either individually or group wise. So this is what is needed. Education is a sector. It will continue to remain short of resources because any amount of investment in education is justifiable. Alright? Universities and colleges which have enormous amount of resources in their kitties, they keep on crying for more resources. I mean, billions and billions of dollars are available with Harvard and Columbia University, but they still have a manager to look after the mobilization of resources there. And today, and in present time, they say that we do not want a distinguished academician to lead the university, we want a successful manager. These are the kinds of things that they are talking about. So, that's my answer to that. Many universities have entered into online mode of teaching and learning without adequate preparations. And this is going, you can see the impact of that very soon. I mean, MIT is not awarding degrees through online mode. They are having the online programs, but they are using those online programs to complement their conventional programs. They are not awarding degrees. We are too excited about it actually. And University Grants Commission has come up with a regulation wherein they say that anyone who secures 3.26 CGPA from NAC in 3 subsequent cycles can offer 3 undergraduate programs and 10 postgraduate programs on 100% basis. When we had instituted the online program in 2014, we had done it with a great caution actually. We advised the universities to offer only 20% of the course content through online mode, thinking that they will gain experience over a period of time. They will strengthen their physical infrastructure to provide the kinds of platforms and management systems that would be required. And once they develop that kind of expertise, then they can be considered to offer programs on 100% basis. And we also thought that the teachers will also gain the experience to identify what kind of content could be delivered in online mode in an easier way, and what kind of content would require the conventional mode of delivery. So these are the challenges which are staring in our faces, and I think the solutions should emanate from the campuses of the academic institutions for that.
Thank you very much, sir.